mitzvahs. For King David was alone in the bathhouse and was crying. For in the bathhouse he could do no commandment. For you see, nobody was allowed in the bathhouse together with King David. He couldn't even do a person a favor. And in the bathhouse he couldn't wear the tefillin. And he was washing himself. He couldn't wear the tzitzit. And since it was a place where he was naked, he could not utter the words of Torah. So he felt separated from God until he reminded himself that he was circumcised. And as a result of that, he said, Sasanochi, I am glad and happy that even in this place, even in a place where I am naked from other commandments, I'm still fulfilling your mitzvah. For you see, the circumcision is an ongoing process, a process that begins when the child is 8 days old and continues on throughout a person's lifetime, that the person be a circumcised person. And this requires explanation. What's the idea of a circumcised person throughout a lifetime? When the child is born, you circumcise it. The foreskin's gone, doesn't come back. What is this profundity of being circumcised throughout a lifetime? For which King David is so happy and rejoicing in the bathhouse. He was away from God in the bathhouse, and the only thing that connected him to God was the circumcision. And we have to understand that circumcision isn't just physically removal of the foreskin. It says in the Torah, you should circumcise the foreskins of your heart. Now, nobody's ever done a heart operation that I know of on any Jew, except for people who have a heart condition in modern-day medicine. But there is no foreskin of the heart that we physically remove. So what is meant by the foreskin of the heart? And Hasidic doctrine goes even further to say, besides the foreskin of the heart, there's also a foreskin of the brain. And the question is, what exactly are these foreskins that are connected to the physical foreskin of the genitalia of the person? And the answer is, the purpose of taking off a foreskin isn't just mutilation, removal of a useful limb. After all, my antagonists say the foreskin is the most sensitive part of the body. It creates such great pleasure in the sexual activity that denying this is really, really hurting the person and hurting the child and taking away the child's ability to choose and have a love life that he might enjoy. And that this is a barbaric act. Barbaric act. 6 million Jews were murdered by the Nazis. That's not barbarism. The Islamists denied the Holocaust ever took place. But the Jews are barbaric because they circumcise their children. Millions of kids are aborted daily. In doctors, in hospitals, doctor-assisted suicide, medicide, in many places is the #1 cause of death, immediate cause of death. Those are not barbaric acts. Circumcision is a barbaric act. And I was lectured, that mutilation means injury, permanent injury on a limb of the body. To which I responded, just because you take off a skin doesn't make it mutilation. That if you were to take that as your definition of mutilation, cutting your hair or cutting your nails, or for that matter, cutting your mustache, or trimming your trees or your bushes, mowing your lawn is also mutilation because you're changing the way it naturally grows. We all know that pruning trees actually helps provide us with greater crops. Now, God created those trees. How is it possible that pruning the trees would improve on God's creation? The answer is, God created the creation in a certain way, and allowed for there to be improvements on it, and that these improvements could bring great benefits to people. He gave man a brain to be able to understand that certain things could be an improvement, could cause things to be better, even though they altered the way things were naturally. Similarly, it is an improvement for the human being to be circumcised. And in fact, it is a sign of shame for a Jewish man not to be circumcised. He is called an Arel. Arel implies not just someone with a foreskin, but someone who's got a foreskin on his heart. Now, what's the foreskin of the heart? The answer is that the foreskin of the heart is the element of self-indulgence which blocks out any sense of truth and commitment and help to others and love, not just to others, but to God. For you see, the purpose of the heart is not just to desire, not just to have a good time. The purpose of the heart is to be true and genuine. True and genuine not just to yourself, but to your neighbor, to your friends, and to God. And you can only be true to yourself, to your neighbor, and to God if you can put yourself aside for a while and think about the greater good. Because if you don't think about the greater good, you're only going to be worried about yourself. Me. 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 And so, God tells us to circumcise the genitalia, the most sensitive place in the person's anatomy, so that even where the person receives the greatest amount of pleasure, the person should realize that this is for a higher purpose, that life is for a higher purpose, that the process of having children is for a higher purpose. And in that process, the person learns to circumcise his heart, to take away the selfishness, the indulgence, the grossness, the evil that prevents a person from being kind to his neighbor, for really caring about his neighbor, and loving the Creator who gave him the life and the opportunity to do all the good things that he can. And so there has to be circumcision of the heart. In order to circumcise the heart, you have to put yourself and your passions and desires aside. It doesn't mean you don't enjoy life. It means they become secondary for a higher calling. And then, after you've circumcised your heart, you can circumcise your brain. And nobody says, open up the head and take out some lobes, do a lobotomy. It means to open up the brain and the mind for a reality yet unseen that the person can't see. For you see, there's a lot that's missing in our observation. Just yesterday they talked about dark matter. And dark matter is found all over the universe, but we can't see it. It's so powerful, it doesn't allow any transmission. It doesn't allow any instrument to recognize that it's there, but it really is there. And so there are things that are unseen and unknown by the person, but yet they are there. They exist. The same thing is true in the spiritual world. There are things that are unseen by the average person, seen only to the great, seen only by the holy, seen by all of the Jewish people at the time of the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. In order to be able to merit this greater knowledge for things unseen, which is called prophecy, you have to circumcise your heart. So there you have the hierarchy, the circumcision of one's passion, the genitalia, leads ultimately to the circumcision of the heart, and the circumcision of the heart leads ultimately to the circumcision of the mind, so that the brain and the mind are able to understand and see.